So hi, it's Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to the MAAP community. We are here again, and we're going to talk about what to do if an emergency arises. I've had an emergency, and I know that others have had emergencies. Jan's had an emergency with her family. What to do if you have to leave, what to do if it's you who has the emergency, because it's really important to have people who can respond immediately to your pet. Or as soon thereafter as possible. So Susan just brought up before we turned on the recording a thought. I'm going to go around and check real quick with everyone on how everything is happening. Connie, how's everything out in California?
Well, everything is so far so good, except that we are bracing for a massive Pacific storm that is about to hit. We had horrible wind last night. In fact, the dogs were sleeping huddled right next to me, which they normally are pretty bulletproof, but the winds were like 50 miles an hour and stuff was flying all over. And we're supposed to get anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of rain in the metro LA area, depending upon where you are. I think right here.
Snow up in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to get snow in our mountains, our foothills here down to 1,500 feet. So that's really low. And we're supposed to get 2 inches of rain right here over the next 2 days or so. So it is going to be wet, wheat weather, and we hope we don't float away. But, again, the other D, disaster, we're bracing for it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was just on a call with a staffer with a community group, a call with a staffer from Senator Alex Padilla's office. And she was talking about all the legislation that he has introduced on the state of California's behalf in the Senate for disaster planning and disaster funding based on our winter storms we had a month or so ago and the ones we're anticipating, and then going into wildfire season. So again, California is, at least 4 of the D's on your list.
Absolutely. And it just is really scary. So I know that Sally is also having a little bit of weather, ice, and I think Jan is probably going to have ice as well, unless she's with her family in Florida. So Sally, tell me about the ice storm.
Well, it just started, but I was just going to say, there's always breed rescue. And, if you don't have, Susan, if you don't have someone, that's going to fly, or drive to pick up Maggie, breed rescue groups, Irish setter groups for me, they'll be there and they will keep that pet. And, God forbid that something horrible happens, they are going to find a wonderful home for that dog. So yeah, we're going to have an ice storm. Hopefully I will not fall and expire. But if I do, there's the breed rescue group, and they're fabulous. And they're going to find the perfect match for the age pet that you have and the personality pet you have.
And that's why you always want to be a member. If you have a purebred dog, you always want to be a member of the National Club, because then you keep abreast of their rescue situation. And you can meet people who are in your area that can help you with the care of your pet if something comes up. And they live close by, because they are broken down by states usually. So you can always find people in the state you live in. So I live in North Carolina. So there are probably about 20 people in the Irish setter world who live in North Carolina. Now, North Carolina is a big state, like California is a big state. Connecticut, not so much. New York's a big state. So you can drive 10 hours. I have friends in Buffalo who would find it really hard to get to me in Westchester County if something were to happen to me, but they would. However, Sally is spot on with rescue in that if you belong to the National Catan Club, you are going to have an inroad with the people who are rescue people. So if there was an emergency and you had no one close by who could take the pet, which we talked about vet techs, we talked about groomers, we talked about dog walkers or people who have kenneled Maggie. If none of those are available, or if you're out of town with Maggie, which would be interesting, since Maggie isn't really a dog that travels well with a leash, and you always have to have a leash on a dog you're going to travel with.
She has a baby stroller.
Does that go in the car?
It can go in the car. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you got her in the car, would she be in a crate, or would she be running free all over the place?
Well, there's a stroller and it detaches from the frame so she can stay inside that. It's like a basket kind of with a netting. So
So
yeah,
is she contained in that basket, or can she get out and run around the car?
she can get out of it if you don't lock the zipper. She can can get out of it. So if you lock the zipper,
Well, then she's in the zippered compartment, and so
you'd have to tear it apart to get out.
well,
she could do that.
She could, but if you're, God forbid, involved in an accident and animal care and control or the police come and she's in that zippered compartment, then they're going to lift that whole zippered compartment out. And if you have a note saying, call one of these people to come and get the dog, or you, and nobody answers or nobody can come immediately, well, then they'll just take her to probably the police station, and then animal care and control, and then to the local shelter, and then to the local rescue if they can't get you. But hopefully you'll have someone who can pick up a phone and say, no, please don't give Maggie away. Susan wants to keep her. I'll be there, or, Catan Rescue is going to be there. Somebody's going to be there to take her off your hands. The problem is you can't leave them indefinitely with the shelter or with animal care and control. You have to have someone who's going to go and get them. And that's the interesting piece that I'm going to talk about tonight. So Jan, I know that you've had a few weeks of ups and downs with your dad. I hope he's on the mend, or at least comfortable.
Thank you. Yeah, he's home with 24-hour care. So for now, we're just decompressing back home for however long I can stay here before I fly back down. But yeah, so I was down for 3 weeks, and it was quite challenging. Tonka was with my friend. But as you say that, and when I thought about taking him with me, my parents' development does not allow dogs. And so my mother was like, well, come show up. They probably won't turn you away.
They probably, that word, they probably, yeah, that's scary.
And I sat there and I said, I don't think so. Like, what happens if I get there and they say no?
Yeah.
And then I'm down in a place that I really don't know that many pet care places or facilities or anybody.
And neither does Tonka.
That's right. And I do have one friend, but she has 2 dogs, and I don't think they take to other dogs, and it would be a lot to ask her to take them. So, he stayed home, even though in some ways I wished he had been with me, because he probably been a great emotional support. So,
for both you and your father. And I think your mom's still with us, right?
Yeah, mainly for me and my mother. And then my father was not home when I was there. So he was still in the rehab hospital. So it really is an interesting question. So if you are, that's a great point. So if you're traveling to your parents or you're traveling anywhere with a pet, I know when I traveled to Colorado, I didn't have a dog with me. When I was traveling home from Colorado, I had a dog with me, and I had made connections in every single state. So this is for you, Susan. I made connections in every single state because I had the national membership catalog. And I called everyone in every state and said, listen, I'm coming through on 95. How far are you from 95? And if something happens to me, it wasn't 95. I guess it was 80 I was traveling on. I have no idea. It was a very long road. It was very boring, I might add. But I called and said, how far are you from it? And they said, well, I'm 3 hours. Well, do you know anybody who's closer? Yeah, Susie Smith is closer. Okay, so I called Susie Smith, who's a member of the Irish Setter Club of America. And I said, hey, Susie, how far are you from 70? And she goes, I'm 15 minutes. Okay, so when I'm driving through Colorado, can I say that, can I put your number down in case there's an accident to come and get my dogs? Absolutely. It's a faith-based thing, right?
you really need to make sure. So Susan, Rose put down the website for Catan's National Club because, you know, it seems silly and it seems like I'm trying to push purebred dogs. I'm not. However, if you can find a club, so say you have a mixed breed dog and you do agility or you do obedience, you know, there's that group that you can always put down as the people who are going to take your dog in the event something happens to you. If you're driving cross country, there are people who do agility. There's national groups that do agility, and you can always ask them, do you have anyone in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, if you're driving to Florida, right? So those 5 states that I could link up with in the event something happens. I know this is a lot of homework to do. However, if you're driving with your pet, not doing this homework is sort of like, you know, driving your car without having any ability to go to a Toyota or Honda dealership if it breaks down, right? You pick up your phone, you Google it, you go, oh, there's a Toyota or a Honda here or there, and you can go get your car fixed. Well, that's not really available to people with pets who are traveling and may have an issue with their dogs. Now, my husband is having surgery. Yay. It was supposed to be in April. The tumor on his kidney is probably 85% cancer. So we are dealing with it really quickly. Thank God he called. I always say my GAV is my guardian angel virtual assistants are on the job. So he called the scheduler on Monday, and the scheduler said, we just had a cancellation. Thank you, Mom and Dad, because they scheduled it up in heaven as opposed to here on earth. And he's going the 28th. But in doing so, it sort of threw a monkey wrench in this whole week and next week. And I'm supposed to be traveling to Texas, and who's going to take care of Junie? Well, the good news is my son, my youngest son, doesn't have a job that is not remote. So he can come home and work from anywhere. So he's going to come home and sit with Jim while I travel to Texas. But these are the kind of things you have to work out, and you have to have an air and a spare. So not only do I have Thomas, but I have my friend in Raleigh who will come here if need be, while I'm away, if Thomas gets overwhelmed, or if something happens with Jim and he has to stay in Raleigh. I have friends in Raleigh who are going to circle around for him. So it's really making sure, and I know Jan and Connie and Sally and Susan and Kieran being in touch with people to back you up is huge. I know, Jan, you have a person who's watched Tonka over and over again, and it was fortuitous that they could take Tonka for 3 weeks, given everything that happened. If that didn't happen, you know, I know Sally has had 2 or 3 times where she had people lined up, and at the last minute, they said, oh, sorry, can't take care of the girls. We always have to have an air and a spare. I actually had a woman who I'm going to speak at her attorneys group, and she said, why would you need 3 people to have care for your dog in the event of an issue? And I said, because I can guarantee you the first 2 are going to be busy the day shit happens. Your first 2 people are going to be busy, even though they've assured you 8 ways from Sunday that they aren't. So Jan, I know that you sent Tonka to his usual person, right?
Well, I sent him to my friend, just because she's very local and my person is about 3 hours away. And I was trying to be like not have to drive 3 hours, and then I can't fly the same day because it's just too much.
Yeah.
And I lose a day on either end, both ends. So she, a close friend of mine took him. He was okay. I mean, he's chews when I'm not he just chews if he's anxious and home alone. And she said, well, he chewed a few things, and she wouldn't tell me what he chewed. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, her Louboutins, the red soled shoes are gone, but okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just hoping, but she's, I drop them off there all the time. But as you were saying that about, I think it's also good to have backups, because you never know how long whatever the emergency is going to be. Like I was out and about for, I was out for 3 weeks, and then You might not have we might have somebody who can take them for a week if you have something happen, but they can't take them for 3. And so you also need a backup just like that, just in case for those reasons.
Yep.
You know, depending on how long a commitment is required.
Yep. And as Susan pointed out, you know, what do you do when you travel? Well, if Maggie's in this zipper compartment in a stroller, she probably needs a collar and leash on so that someone can get her out of the stroller, because that's incredibly important. And I don't know, Susan, if you put her in with at least a collar on, and if she's impossible to put a leash on, then maybe she needs to be in there, even with the risk of her choking herself while she's in there by getting wrapped up in the leash. It's sort of a trade-off of whether or not someone would be able to get her if she hopped out and started running down the street. If she didn't have a leash on, it could be troublesome. So these are all things that are important protocols to put in if you're traveling with Maggie, because she is sort of an independent spirit from what you shared with us.
She definitely is. Well, she's, I think, a fearful spirit, and causes her to behave in ways that are not very endearing, let's say. So she doesn't fit the stereotype for the breed. And yeah, I don't know if I need to put a warning tag on her or something, but
oh, absolutely. I wouldn't travel anywhere without her, without a tag on her saying she's a fear biter. Not that she's vicious and she's going to rip your face off. No, that's not what she's going to do, but she's definitely a fear biter. So be aware that if you open this, she may bite you because she's afraid of strangers. And I'd put that up in the house as well in the event someone comes into the house, so that unless you keep her away from strangers who come into the house.
Another thing, going back to the containment of Maggie in the car, I am a firm believer in really, really solid crates. And it's probably because I literally have, grown up since the age of my first driver's license at 16 on the California freeways, where, there are a lot of accidents because we have more cars than any place in the Union. But you want, even if Maggie were the model canine good citizen, who loved everybody, who was a therapy dog, you would want a really solid crate to contain her in case of, as Deborah mentioned, in case of accident. And I'll tell you why. Depending upon where, you too can be the model driver, DMV AAA rated, but it's the other guy or gal on the freeway or on the roads that you have to worry about. And depending upon how you are hit in an accident, whether you are rear-ended, whether you are T-boned, whether you are, whatever the accident is, the dog can get thrown. And if the carrier is soft, we've had Wheatons who have been in soft crates, who have been in the cargo deck of an SUV or a minivan, that have been thrown through the windshield and killed when they're rear-ended, when their car is rear-ended. If the car is thrown off the road, and one of the doors opens, the dog can get loose and is gone forever. If the dog is in a solid, as in a metallic crate, or some other fiberglass, or some other solid material with a locked door, doesn't have to be bolted with a security lock, but just a sturdy bolted door, the dog is going to be safe and isn't going to get thrown, isn't going to get injured, isn't going to get lost. And again, this has nothing to do with behavior. This just has to do with physical safety. So I really encourage you to get a solid crate for any dog.
And because she's small, you can get one that would fit in the back of a sedan. It always comes
exactly
an issue when you have those big dogs like Tonka or the Irish setters.
Or Wheatons.
or Wheaton's. It's hard to find a crate that is going to fit into a sedan if you have a sedan. So if you don't have a crate, the reason you want a crate is that in an accident, it gives them added protection that they're not going to be, thrown around the car. I know that a lot of people really ascribe to harnesses and things that connect to the seatbelt, which is better than nothing. So I'm a proponent of anything. I am in the same camp with Connie. I like to put them in crates. However, people can't necessarily put them in crates. So if you make sure that they are, they can't necessarily get free. That's the second best. Because whether you put them in a soft crate or you put them in one of those harnesses with a clip to the seatbelt, it's basically all the same because the soft crate isn't going to contain them at all. The harness seatbelt thing will contain them. It'll keep them near the car, which is good. May keep them from going through the windshield, which is better. So I understand that many people are not crate people like Connie and I are. So I get that. So it's that you want to take that added effort to do what it is you feel comfortable doing that's actually going to work for your pet. So if you put them in a soft-sided crate or a soft-sided containment, something that isn't attached to the car somehow,
we do attach it to the car, so it's never just loose.
So it's attached to the seatbelt.
Yeah, it's attached to the headrest.
So it's as long as it's going to, but it is attached, she isn't attached. So if it gave way, she could get out of that container and run out of the car, right?
Probably.
Well, and there's another aspect too to worry about.
Mhm.
And it occurs to me as we're talking about this, and that is, God forbid the car catches fire in an accident. And if the dog is actually attached, if you can't go to the back of the car or wherever the dog is and just quickly unbolt a door to the crate and grab the dog and get the dog out, but if you've got to maneuver with stuff that's belted or bolted or whatever, on physically onto the car, that becomes a problem. And a crate, you can lift the whole, bloody thing out with the dog
I
inside.
did that when I had my flat tire. I just took the crate out and put him in the crate.
Exactly.
So Jan, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to bring up, because when I was in my car accident, it was a 6-lane highway, 5 cars and loads of traffic. Having a crate on the side of the road was a lot safer than
You betcha.
having a dog on a leash with people honking and everything, which so much better.
Yeah,
Especially
I
with
agree,
Maggie
Jan.
being a little fearful. So they have a lot of these crates. If you go on Facebook Marketplace and you put in dog crates, you can find many, many, many dog crates the size of Maggie that you can put in. And that
I
way-
actually do have some hard crates. I haven't used them with Maggie because we were treating her like a queen. And yeah, but you brought up some good points, Connie.
Yeah,
Thank
traveling
you.
with pets is always an issue. And I know that being able to make sure that they are safe and secure. I know that most of the clip-on things are one clip on, one clip off, Connie. So it's sort of like opening a crate. I mean, I always lock my crates with bucket clips, which probably means nothing to anyone, but they're the two-sided button clips that you put on, which don't lock the crate, but lock the crate so that it won't, if anything gives way, it won't open. However, it's not something that somebody who needs to get the dog out because there's a fire or something can't get the dog out. My crates tend to be so big that if God forbid the car was on fire, I wouldn't be able to get the crates out because they're very big. And it's interesting because the car is empty now. And so Junie is riding in the back seat, which is really against my religion on so many levels. However, it's interesting. when you are driving with your husband and he wants to take Junie everywhere. And I, of course, am like, well, let's put the crate in the way back. No, we're going to go food shopping. We're going to do this. So it is hard. I am here to raise my hand and say it's really hard when you're traveling with someone to assure that your dog is safe. I know that when we went to Raleigh last week to see the doctor, Junie was in a crate in the way back, much to the chagrin of Jim, because I said it's too far. And I just want to make sure that he's okay. And Connie, you'll remember the 5T crates, heavier than the hammers of hell. However, if somebody rear ends you with a 5T crate in the back, their car is going to fold and the 5T crate is going to be fine because it weighs about 700 pounds.
Wow.
And is really built for this kind of thing. In fact, in the old days, before they had the impact crates and things like that that are made of aluminum and are pretty sturdy, we all bought crates that were really incredibly heavy so that, God forbid, if we had an accident, the car would roll, but the crates would actually keep the car sturdy because the crates wouldn't fold the roof. The roof wouldn't go anywhere because the crates were there. So it really is important if you're traveling with your pets, if you have an emergency with a family member and you have to get on the road, to do what Jan did and what I did, which was find someone nearby who can take the dog in an emergency. You know, these are the things we need to think about all the time. Or take the dog with you, but make sure if you take the dog with you, that you have people on the road. I mean, I absolutely had 2 or 3 people on the drive from Morehead City to Raleigh who knew I was on the road. And if I had to make a phone call to come and get Junie because something happened, they knew where I was and they were on the way. So it really is incredibly important. I know that when Sally would come down to my house, we would always make sure we knew when we were doing that, even if she was coming to the vet, so that if, God forbid, anything occurred, I hope she knew, and I'm sure she did, that I would be on the road to rendezvous with her wherever it was. And it's only like an hour and a half. But if you're going on a road trip with Maggie, definitely you need to find a different way to build a support system on the road. And I see that Kieran is here, but I'm not sure if he's able to chat. I know that he's been busy, but how are you, Kieran?
Debbie, how are you? All good here, thanks. How are you keeping?
Well, very good. My husband's going in for surgery and we're hoping for the best.
I got that, yeah. It's been a very interesting night with the crates.
It's so important. And I know that when you talk about the dogs, crates may not be part of coming up in a discussion. And most people do drive down the road with their dogs hanging out the window. In fact, we had a guy whose dogs came across the golf course and were in our driveway. And Jim caught one and put it in one of our kennels, and the other one took off her home and crossed a very busy street. So we have our little street, and then we have a golf course, and then we have a big street. And that dog went from our little street across the golf course, across the big street, home, and got its father. And then the guy was driving around looking for the yellow lab. And so Connie, you'll cringe, and I'm sure Jan and Sally and Susan will cringe as well. He lowered the tailgate of his pickup truck and just put the Labrador in the back of the pickup truck bed. And I almost had a breakdown. Lovely. First of all, it was a big lab, and it was heavy too. It wasn't fat, but it was solid. It could hardly get up into the cab, but it did. And he drove off with it, just standing there in the cab. And I went,
Drives me berserk.
I know. I sat there and I went, oh God. The little dog's in the car with him, hopping around in the seats, and the big dog's in the back. And I sat there and I said, I cannot be anybody's keeper. I can suggest, but he was not the kind of guy you suggest anything to. So I didn't suggest anything to him. However, it broke my heart because these are the kind of things that if you slam on the brakes,
The dog's thrown.
Or you make a
8,000
sharp turn. Yeah, you make a sharp turn, the dog rolls out, or God forbid, they see something and they jump out of the car.
And they jump. My sister Pat, who is one of the founders of NorCal Golden Retriever Rescue up in the Bay Area, rescued a lovely, lovely golden at the age of 1 year. He lived to be 14 in her care, who had been thrown out of the flatbed of a pickup truck on one of the big freeways in the Bay Area, and front leg shattered. The owners refused to have the surgery and wanted the dog put down, and NorCal Golden Retriever Rescue stepped in and paid for the surgery, and Pat adopted the dog. And he, as I said, he lived to be 13 or 14 with 3 legs, but he was otherwise a perfectly healthy year-old golden.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a whole different way. We were talking about that today in one of the groups I was in, how people treat pets differently, some as property still, and some as family members. And, you know, if they're disposable and they're replaceable, because there are so many dogs available in shelters, you would think if you pay money for a Labrador Retriever, you would treat it a little differently. But I think that it's just a mindset, and not to criticize anyone who is listening to this who may have their dogs ride in the pickup truck. I just want you to think about how you would feel if, God forbid, the dog saw something and jumped out of the bed of the car, which actually happened to my good friend Gary Norman, who's blind. They were driving down a road. They were walking down the road in Baltimore City. And, you know, you don't drive fast in Baltimore City. First of all, the city's tight, and he was, you know, it was a neighborhood, so the roads are narrow. And the gentleman was driving very slowly, and his dog saw the seeing eye dog and jumped out of the car and attacked the seeing eye dog. And so, you know, it was interesting because the guy got out of the car and said to Gary, "Well, what do you expect? You're walking down the road." And he, like, this is a really well-trained dog that could be destroyed. And that has happened to many service animals that can be destroyed by somebody's dog, you know, who isn't tethered, who isn't, you know, in a safe situation. I mean, I don't really mind. Well, I sort of do, but I don't. If somebody has a crate bungee down in the back of their pickup truck, it is not ideal. It's not ideal. However, it's better than having the dog hanging out in the back of the pickup truck.
You
so
bet.
I'm okay with that, sort of. I just, you know, you really have to be careful with your pets. They depend on you to make sure that you keep them safe, and they're not the ones making the decision. It drives me nuts, and I apologize to anyone who takes offense. It drives me nuts when they say, "But my dog doesn't like to be tied up in the back." And I'm like, okay, so there has to be an adult in the room. I'm just saying there has to be an adult in the room. And you have to decide whether or not they're, you know, sitting on your lap while you're driving, looking out the window is safe, especially with airbags that will compromise a child. So if you have a little dog,
It'll kill it.
It'll kill it. It'll kill it in a minute if you have a
No fuzz. No fuzz. The dog will be dead.
And, you know, so just remember this when you are, you know, traveling with your dogs, when you are asking people to care for your pets, you really need to have a network, especially if you're traveling cross country or traveling out of state, or you're traveling 3 hours. You might be still in state, but you're traveling 3 hours away. You need to have people who you can count on to care for your pets. And if your family member is ill, remember the MAAP plan always works for you when you're ill. It also works for you when your family is ill, because you've already checked in with these people who are your caregivers. And this weekend we went through this. You check in with them, and you always check in with them every year to make sure that you can call them in an emergency. You know, they may not be the person who wants to take your dog long-term. However, if they are the person who has already assured you that they can take your dog in an emergency if you have to go somewhere because a family member is sick or you're sick, it's key. And you have to keep those people, you know, advised of each dog. So for Susan, it would be imperative for her to find that person either from Catan Rescue or from the veterinarian's office or from the groomer, or just, finding a trainer that will come to the house and train you and train Maggie so that you can have an easier time both at home and when you travel with her. So I'm going to wrap up because I can't believe it's 10 after 7 already. I am so thrilled all of you are here. Last comments on transportation with your pets and also making sure that you have that emergency person lined up who will always be there. So I'm going to start with you, Sally.
I think what you've said in the past, Deborah, on the crate and on your dashboard also, keep all the contacts right there. So heaven forbid you did have an auto accident, all the information would be right there. That's it.
Susan?
Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking about the transportation issue, and if I had an accident and my backup is, the Seneca Hill kennel, I'd have to have a way to get her to there,
Well, do you know that Uber has pet-friendly cars?
Well, I don't know what the rules are for Uber as far as how far they'll travel or how far they will take a dog. I know there are companies that do transport. I'm more familiar with that option, just because I know they won't, Seneca Hill will not drop everything and run and come and get my.
I will bet you that Seneca Hill has information on pet transports.
I will ask them. Yeah.
And if they don't, then your veterinarian will, because there are people who are housebound who will use a veterinarian and use transportation. There are, if you Google pet transports in my area near me, you'll be able to come up with some names of places that would help you transport Maggie in a pickle.
Yeah, I think that's very important to have that, and that could be in your plan.
Yeah, because then she's used to them. And if she's used them, that would be great too.
Yeah.
Jan?
I was just thinking that if, I know I have one and it's just a recommendation for people is to have a first aid kit in your car.
Yep.
Always.
For you and the dog. So
Right.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I have a
Right.
pet first aid kit.
because it's important. Connie?
I cannot overemphasize the need to crate your dog in a car. My dogs typically start when they're puppies. We're talking, the 5-minute ride down the hill to the vet for puppy wellness checks when the litter is still together, before they ever go to their forever homes. And certainly, for housebreaking, a crate is indispensable, but it also has the double whammy benefit of training the dog to be very comfortable in a crate when you go in the car. And the dog looks forward to the car rides, jumps right in the crate, looks forward to settling down in the crate and going for a ride, and everything is absolutely terrific, and your dog is safe and you are safe. And to address the people who say, oh, my dog doesn't like to be confined, or Susan, I had to chuckle at your comment, oh, we treated Maggie like a queen. They're dogs. They are dogs. Just like kids are kids. And as Deborah said so sagely, we need to be the adult leadership. We need to be the adults in the room. And, just like you send a kid to school because they have to learn so that they can be productive, independent adults, you train a dog with manners and, just with basic social etiquette for their own safety and for everybody else around them. So the dog actually feels very secure in a den in their crate. After my dogs are housebroken, I leave the crate doors open in the house and they sleep in them at night.
Yeah, I actually have a crate, a hard-sided crate that's just set aside for Maggie when we're leaving the house. We always put her in that, and she's very comfortable.
Yeah.
kind of in her safe spot, and she goes there.
Exactly. It's their safe spot.
Yeah,
And if
so-
you put her in the house and then carry it out to the car, she won't know any different.
well,
Um,
it's too bad, it's too big really to go in the car. It's the one that the breeder recommended. I bought it
Yeah,
before I even brought her home. It's a little bit large to go in I have a small car. I have a Volvo S60, so it's not very big. And
is it a sedan or is it a liftback?
it's
Does
a sedan.
Yeah, so the seats don't fold down, so there's no getting it in.
But she's a small dog, and so she would
Yeah.
need a small crate. You know,
Yeah.
if you've got a
You just get a
medium-sized
smaller crate,
breed
right.
like I do, or big ones like Deborah and Sally, and like I have had in the past, you know, then you have issues. But Susan, you're golden.
So I'm going to end up with Kieran. This was an educational piece for you, Kieran. I'm sure that this was a little bit more about crating that you'd ever wanted to know.
I think, Debbie, it was fascinating. It'd be worth revisiting this subject at a later date. What sort of jumps out to me is a little bit of research. I'll certainly look it up in the next few weeks when I get time. A little bit of research on how you could quantify that risk. And
Yeah.
what I have in mind there is if you look at, say, the number of children that need surgery from a dog bite because they were unsupervised. And when you look at the issue of dogs in cars, I don't think it's ever asked in the theory section of driving tests. I'm not 100% sure what the story is in the States, but I know in Ireland there isn't a mention of it in the theory test.
No, nor here either.
Not
Right.
here. They never ask you. No.
And the insurance companies seem to be silent on the matter as well. You know, the car insurance companies, that whenever you look at a car insurance ad or a house insurance ad, you'll often see a dog jumping into a car or whatever without a crate. But it'd be worth just trying to quantify where that risk is. You know, you consider that every fourth American house has a pet dog. Most of those have a car. So then you're looking at something like probably 30 million dogs experiencing a drive in a car at some stage in their lives. And I suppose one of the big things I'm always weary about is when people say drivers have backseat passenger. They're very quick to tell the passenger, "Will you hold the dog there and we'll be okay?" Now, I'm sorry, if the dog gets spooked, it doesn't matter who the passenger is. There's no control issue there. The dog is
If you had a
gone.
head-on collision, the dog's going right through the seats into the
Right,
windshield.
absolutely. Into the windscreen.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. The other issue I have is if there's somebody who doesn't know how to control a dog, in other words, if the dog is just in their hands, then you leave the risk that the dog can spring out if it's slightly spooked straight into the driver's seat. And then you have a very serious accident. It's one of these many things in the dog world where the risks aren't quantified sufficiently to make the headlines or to be taken on board.
I'm just thinking of data that you might mine in the United States. Try, and this is strictly off the top of my head. One is the American Veterinary Medical Association. They may have statistics on dogs in car accidents. The other is AAA, the American Automobile Association. They may have statistics.
And also you could try some of the insurance companies to see if they count statistics for reasons for care. So
Right.
they do track care of pets. I don't know that they track the reason the care is necessary, i.e. it went through the windshield.
Another is the American Kennel Club Pet Health Care Partners. That's their insurance arm. They may have statistics on claims for orthopedic and other injuries from car accidents.
I know that it would be under medical, like, pet insurance. It's not under auto because I called.
Yeah, it's not under auto insurance.
They're not covered and they're not considered
Right,
property.
they have them in their commercials, Jan, but they don't.
Yeah.
But they don't cover
try
them.
try the AKC Pet Health Partners. That's again their insurance arm. And the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals may have statistics too.
OFA.
OFA.
So as we wrap this up, I'm so glad all of you have stayed on, because this has been an incredibly great call. And I agree with you, Kieran, and I'm going to do some research with you because I think this is an important piece. And I get it that some people can't put a crate in their car. I get it. They have 2 kids, they have 2 adults, and the dog has to go and ride free, and that's fine. What's the alternative for the dog to keep it safe? You're right, holding the leash, not necessarily the best thing. Putting it in a harness, attaching it to a seatbelt might be better, but then do the kids have the wherewithal to be able to unhook it if the dog needs to get out? And will the dog remain with a leash on it so that it can leave the car safely? As Jan pointed out, if you're on the highway, you certainly don't want to just have a dog on a leash. That can be dangerous because it can be frightened and it could be strong and pull away. So that's really interesting. I will give one antidote before I say goodbye. As I was packing up my car in Pleasantville, and as we were doing things, unpacking here in Morehead City, when I had the crates in the car, Junie would spend hours in my car with the doors open. It could be 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I'd have fans on him because I have electric fans. And he would sit, and I'd have the silver things around the car so that it was very cool in the car. But the dogs would sit in the car quietly for hours because they just wanted to be near me outside, but they were in the crates. And in fact, when the golfers pass by here in Morehead City, if the car is turned so that they can see in the back of the car where the crates are, they all walk up to me and say, "How does that dog stay in and not bark?" And I said, because he knows if he's in that car, in that crate, this is home. And he's going to go with me wherever I'm going. So he will sit there quietly for the rest of his natural born life, more so than in his kennel in the dog room, because that means he's staying put, and never make a peep, because they want to make sure that they go with me on the trip. I mean, my girls were the same. All my dogs, when they're in the crates in the car, they're quiet as church mice. Mostly because, as Connie pointed out, when they are babies, we make sure they feel comfortable. We're very kind to them. And if they start that squeaking in the crate, we gently stop them. Usually I use a squirt bottle right between the eyes with the stream. And because I'm just basically mean, but there is no barking in the crate. You don't bark in a crate. I mean, I know that Sally would be horrified to know that Roxy had many shots between the eyes when she was a baby puppy, because she would go into a cacophony in the car. And yet now when they travel in the car, they are very quiet, and everybody's quiet. So it really is something you need to think about. I'd also like to, chat later about how many people took their puppies home in a crate. So Susan said her breeder told her to get a crate, but did she take the dog home in a crate? I'm sort of a stinker about stuff like that. Your crate has to be in the car when you take the dog home. It just is what it is, because I want to make sure that you get into the habit, and maybe you never do it again. And how would I know if you don't live around the block from me? However, I want to start you off doing the things that are right for the puppy, because God forbid the puppy get hurt on the drive home. I mean, I would never forgive myself, and you would never forgive yourself. So we really have to make sure that our dogs are safe in the car. And if your car doesn't accommodate a crate, then you need to do something that will secure them in the center, not that they go right through to the front windshield, but that they have some sort of a screen or something that keeps them from going through the front windshield, and that they are easy to get in and get out. So Connie made a good point that if you tie them down, you might not be able to get them out if the car is on fire, and we never want to do that. So we want to make sure our dogs are safe. So until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton. This is the MAAP community call. I'm so glad all of you are here. I'm so glad everyone was available to come to our workshop over the weekend. And until next time, kiss your dogs for me. Thanks so much.